Maria woke up before the first light of dawn touched the sky. The small alarm clock on the broken wooden table beside her bed rang loudly, but she was already awake. She rarely slept deeply because her mind was always full of worries about her family, the bills, and the work waiting for her. She lived in a tiny one-room house with her mother and two younger brothers. The roof leaked whenever it rained, and the walls were cracked, but it was all they could afford. Her mother's health was weak, and her younger brothers still went to school. Every day Maria carried the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but she never complained. She believed if she kept working hard, life would one day be better for her family. She quickly tied her hair back into a neat bun, put on her simple maid's uniform that she had washed by hand the night before, and stepped into her worn-out shoes. The air outside was still cold, and she had a long walk to the bus stop, but Maria moved quickly, used to this routine. The world around her was quiet, but her thoughts were loud. She thought of her sick mother lying in bed and prayed silently that nothing serious would happen to her while she was away. She thought of her brothers, who often studied by candlelight when electricity was cut off, and hoped they would not lose faith in their dreams. All of this gave Maria strength. Though poor, she was rich in determination. The bus finally came, old and crowded, but Maria squeezed herself inside. She held onto the metal bar tightly as the vehicle bumped along the uneven road. Other passengers barely noticed her, as if she was invisible. She was used to that too. For many people, maids were not important. They were there to serve quietly, not to be noticed. But Maria didn't let it hurt her. She carried herself with quiet pride because she knew her work meant survival for her family. When she reached the grand gates of Mr. Harrison's mansion, she took a deep breath. The house was like something from another world. High walls, shining gates, and inside stood a mansion that seemed too big for one family. Expensive cars lined the driveway, and the garden looked like it came out of a magazine, with neatly cut grass, fountains, and flowers that Maria could only dream of planting at home. Each time she walked through those gates, she felt like she was stepping into a different universe, one where people had everything, while she struggled for the basics. But she never let envy grow in her heart. She believed life gave each person a path, and hers was to work here with honesty. Inside the mansion, other staff were already busy. The head maid, Mrs. Turner, gave orders in her usual sharp voice. Maria greeted her politely and went straight to her duties. She dusted furniture that shone like gold, polished floors that could reflect a person's face, and arranged flowers in tall glass vases. She moved quickly and quietly, always careful not to draw unnecessary attention. Some of the other staff whispered about her behind her back, calling her the poor girl or the charity case, but Maria ignored them. She had learned long ago that silence was stronger than anger. While working in the dining room, Maria often saw Mr. Harrison's daughter, Emily. Emily was different from the others. She was only 11 years old, but she always spoke kindly to Maria. Unlike many children of rich families who ignored or even mocked the staff, Emily noticed the effort Maria put into her work. Sometimes she smiled at her and said, "Good morning, Maria," or offered her a thank you for cleaning her study. Those little gestures warmed Maria's heart. She began to see Emily not just as her employer's daughter but as a sweet child who deserved love and care. One morning, while Maria was sweeping near the staircase, Emily stopped and asked her about her family. Maria was surprised. No one in the house had ever asked about her life before. She hesitated but then said softly, "I have two brothers and a mother who is sick. They depend on me." Emily's eyes widened with sympathy. She didn't laugh or look away. Instead, she whispered, "That must be hard for you. You're very brave." Those words stayed with Maria the entire day. For once, someone had seen her not as a poor maid but as a person with feelings and struggles. The days went on, each one demanding but steady. Maria worked from sunrise to late at night, always moving from one task to another. She rarely rested, yet she carried no bitterness. Whenever her legs ached or her hands grew tired, she thought of her mother's smile when she brought home medicine or of her brothers reading their school books. That gave her energy to keep going. Sometimes she paused while cleaning the mansion's long halls, staring at the paintings on the walls or the sparkling chandeliers, and wondered what it would feel like to live in such comfort. But she always turned back to her work, reminding herself that dreams could wait, but responsibilities could not. Though Maria was often invisible to most of the mansion's residents, there were times she noticed things others ignored. She saw how Emily sometimes looked lonely even in the middle of the grand house, her parents always busy with meetings and travels. Maria saw the way Emily's eyes lit up when she played outside, running freely without rules or expectations. Perhaps that was why Maria felt protective of her. In Emily's innocence, she saw her own younger brothers. She promised herself silently that if Emily ever needed help, she would be there, no matter what. Every night, when Maria returned home, she carried a small bag of groceries she had bought with her wages. Sometimes it was only bread, rice, and a few vegetables, but her mother and brothers always greeted her as if she had brought treasures. They sat together on the floor, shared food, and laughed at little things. Those moments filled Maria with peace. They reminded her that happiness didn't always come from wealth but from love and togetherness. Still, deep inside, she wished she could give her family more better food, a stronger house, proper medical care for her mother, and a brighter future for her brothers. Maria's life seemed to flow in the same rhythm every day: hard work, small joys, constant struggles, but she didn't realize destiny was preparing her for something extraordinary. In the mansion full of wealth and power, she was just a poor maid, but soon her courage would put her at the center of a story no one could forget. The seeds of change were already planted, though hidden for now. She was about to face a test of bravery that would shake the mansion, surprise the powerful, and reveal the strength that had always been inside her. The sun was just beginning to set when the mansion became alive with the sound of laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. That evening, Mr. Harrison had invited several business associates and friends for a private dinner party. The grand hall was decorated with fresh flowers, candles, and silverware that sparkled under the golden lights. Guests in elegant suits and gowns arrived one by one, stepping out of shiny cars, their laughter filling the air as they entered. For Maria, this meant extra work. She and the other staff had been busy since morning, polishing every corner of the house, preparing meals, and ensuring nothing went wrong during the event. Maria moved quickly through the halls, carrying trays, refilling glasses, and checking small details. Though her uniform was plain and her shoes worn, she carried herself with quiet dignity. She never expected anyone to notice her, she was there only to make sure others were comfortable. While most of the wealthy guests barely acknowledged her presence, she didn't mind. She focused on her duties, reminding herself that her wages tonight would pay for her mother's medicine. As the evening went on, Maria noticed Emily sitting at a table near her father. The young girl wore a simple but beautiful dress, her hair tied with a ribbon. She looked cheerful at first, smiling politely as her father introduced her to the guests. But after some time, Maria saw her expression change. Emily grew pale and kept fidgeting with her hands. Maria's heart tightened as she watched the little girl shift uncomfortably in her seat. At first, Maria thought maybe Emily was just tired of the long evening, but soon it became clear that something was very wrong. Emily coughed softly, then harder, clutching her chest. She tried to speak to her father, but he was deep in conversation with a group of men in suits and didn't notice. Maria, standing nearby with a tray of drinks, quickly placed it down and hurried toward Emily. Emily's face was pale now, her lips trembling as she whispered, "I can't breathe." Panic rose in Maria's chest. She knelt beside Emily, gently holding her hand. "Stay calm, child," she whispered, trying to soothe her. But inside, Maria's heart was racing. This was no ordinary illness. Something urgent was happening, and time was slipping away. The guests began to notice Emily's struggle. A few gasps filled the hall, and suddenly the music and laughter stopped. Mr. Harrison turned at last, his face draining of color when he saw his daughter leaning against Maria, struggling for breath. He rushed forward, shouting for someone to call the doctor. The head maid panicked, and the butler hurried to the phone, but Maria could tell that these actions were not fast enough. Emily's small chest was rising and falling unevenly, and her eyes were full of fear. "Call an ambulance," someone shouted. A guest fumbled for his phone, but Maria knew too well how slow that process could be. The mansion was far from the city center, and ambulances often took a long time to arrive, especially in heavy evening traffic. Every second mattered. If they waited, Emily's condition could worsen beyond saving. Maria's eyes darted to the wide glass doors of the hall, where she could see the driveway and the line of cars parked outside. Among them was the bright red Ferrari that everyone in the house knew belonged to Mr. Harrison. The car was his pride, often polished and admired by guests, a symbol of wealth and power. Maria had never touched it before, not even dared to walk too close. But tonight, it wasn't a symbol, it was the only chance to save a child's life. She stood quickly, her mind made up in an instant. She turned to Mr. Harrison, who was shaking Emily and calling her name in desperation. "Sir, she needs the hospital now," Maria said firmly, her voice louder than usual. "If we wait for an ambulance, it may be too late." But in the chaos, no one listened to her. They were too busy shouting, panicking, and trying to figure out what to do. Maria didn't wait for permission. Her eyes fell on the small table near the entrance where Mr. Harrison had placed his car keys earlier. Without hesitation, she rushed forward, snatched the keys, and headed toward the Ferrari. Gasps and whispers filled the hall as people realized what she was doing. "The maid is stealing the car," someone shouted. Another guest laughed nervously, thinking it was impossible. But Maria didn't stop to explain. She hurried back to Emily, gently lifting her into her arms. Emily was light, her body trembling weakly against Maria's chest. "Hold on, Emily," Maria whispered softly. "I'll get you there." Without waiting for approval, she pushed through the stunned crowd and carried Emily out of the hall. The night air was cool, the headlights of the Ferrari shining like eyes ready for the race ahead. Her hands shook as she unlocked the car and placed Emily gently in the passenger seat. The girl's breaths were shallow, her face pale under the moonlight. Maria's heart pounded as she slid into the driver's seat. She had driven before old cars, nothing like this powerful machine, but there was no room for fear now. She inserted the key, the engine roared to life with a sound that made her tremble, but she gripped the steering wheel firmly. Inside the mansion, chaos exploded. Some staff ran after her, shouting. Mr. Harrison froze in shock, torn between fury and desperation. He couldn't believe his maid had just taken his car, but more importantly, his daughter was inside. The guests murmured, their voices filled with disbelief and outrage. Yet in that moment, Maria was already pulling out of the driveway, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. The Ferrari leaped forward with a power Maria had never experienced. The engine growled, and the tires screeched as she pushed the car onto the main road. Her hands were tight on the wheel, her knuckles white, but her focus was razor sharp. Emily whimpered beside her, and Maria reached over for a second to squeeze her hand. "You're going to be fine," she promised, though her own chest was heavy with fear. As the car flew through the streets, pedestrians and other drivers turned their heads in shock. A Ferrari speeding past was not unusual, but to see a maid in a plain uniform behind the wheel was something no one expected. Maria didn't care about their stares. All that mattered was reaching the hospital before Emily's fragile body gave up. The road seemed endless, but Maria pressed harder on the accelerator, guiding the car skillfully despite her inexperience with such speed. Every corner, every light, every bump on the road tested her courage. Behind her, She could almost hear the voices of those at the mansion calling her a thief. But in her heart, she knew she wasn't stealing. She was saving. With each passing second, the urgency grew. Emily's breaths were shallow, her eyes closing slowly. "Stay with me, Emily," Maria begged softly. "Don't give up. We're almost there." The powerful Ferrari roared through the night, carrying with it not just a billionaire's daughter but also the weight of a maid's courage. And so began Maria's desperate race against time, a journey that would change her life forever. What looked to others like theft was, in truth, an act of bravery that would soon shake everyone's hearts and make them question what true worth really meant. The Ferrari tore through the streets like a red flame in the night. Maria's heart raced as fast as the car's engine, her palms slippery with sweat as she gripped the wheel tighter. She had never driven anything this powerful before. Every time she pressed her foot on the accelerator, the car roared, reminding her that it was built for speed, for a lifestyle far beyond her reach. But tonight, it was not a luxury, it was Emily's only hope. Maria leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the road ahead, praying silently that she would not make a mistake. Beside her, Emily's small body trembled. Her face was pale, her breaths shallow, and every second made Maria's fear grow heavier. "Stay with me, Emily," she whispered, glancing quickly at the child before focusing back on the road. "You'll be all right. Just hold on a little longer." Emily's eyes fluttered open for a moment, and she gave a weak nod. Even in her weakness, she seemed to trust Maria completely, and that trust gave Maria strength. The city streets were crowded even at night. Cars honked, drivers shouted as Maria sped past them, weaving through traffic with trembling hands but determined eyes. Some people turned their heads in disbelief. They recognized the Ferrari. Many in the city knew it belonged to the billionaire Mr. Harrison, but no one expected to see the maid driving it. For Maria, those stares and shouts didn't matter. She only saw the hospital sign in her mind, urging her forward. Every turn felt like a battle. The Ferrari surged with more power than she had ever handled. At one corner, the car skidded slightly, and Maria's heart nearly stopped, but she regained control, whispering a prayer under her breath. She thought of her mother, of her younger brothers, of how life had always pushed her to do the impossible. Tonight was just another impossible challenge, except this time, someone's life depended on her. Red lights flashed ahead. Traffic had piled up, and cars were stuck bumper to bumper. Maria's chest tightened in panic. She slowed for only a second, then spotted a small gap along the side of the road. Without hesitation, she turned the wheel sharply, guiding the Ferrari onto the edge, passing the waiting cars. Drivers shouted angrily, but Maria didn't hear them. All she heard was the sound of Emily's uneven breathing and the pounding of her own heart. The hospital was still several miles away. Every second stretched like an eternity. Maria spoke softly to Emily, as if her words could keep the girl awake. "You're strong, Emily. Just a little longer, and the doctors will help you. I won't let anything happen to you." The child opened her lips slightly, whispering, "Thank you, Maria." Those two simple words pierced Maria's heart and filled her with new courage. She pressed the accelerator harder, ignoring the fear of what could happen if she failed. Suddenly, blue lights appeared in the rearview mirror. A police car had spotted the speeding Ferrari and was now chasing her. Maria's stomach dropped. To them, she must have looked like a thief, a maid stealing her boss's car, racing through the streets recklessly. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but she shook her head firmly. She could not stop. Not now. If she slowed down, Emily might not make it to the hospital. The police siren wailed, and the car behind her grew closer. Maria pressed harder on the pedal, the Ferrari surging forward with a burst of speed. Her hands shook, but she held on. She whispered again, "God, please guide me. I cannot fail this child." The Ferrari raced ahead, leaving the sirens fading slightly behind. Maria knew she had only bought herself a little time, but it was enough. The hospital lights finally appeared in the distance, glowing faintly against the dark night sky. Relief flooded Maria's chest, but she didn't let herself relax yet. The hardest part was still to come, getting there safely. She turned sharply at the next corner, the tires screeching against the pavement. Emily whimpered softly, and Maria reached over quickly to touch her hand. "Almost there," she said. "Just a few more minutes." The streets grew narrower as she approached the hospital district. More people appeared on the sidewalks, startled as the Ferrari thundered past. Some shouted in shock, pointing at the sight of a maid driving such a car. Maria ignored it all. Her mind was a tunnel leading only to the hospital entrance. Her heart pounded wildly as she pulled into the hospital driveway. Nurses and guards outside froze in disbelief at the sight of the Ferrari stopping so abruptly. Maria jumped out, rushing to Emily's side. With careful but urgent hands, she lifted the child from the seat and carried her toward the emergency doors. "Help! Please help!" she shouted, her voice breaking. Doctors and nurses rushed forward, immediately taking Emily from her arms and placing her on a stretcher. Maria stumbled after them, her legs weak, her chest heaving with exhaustion and fear. She watched as they pushed Emily through the double doors into the emergency ward, disappearing inside. For a moment, Maria stood frozen, tears stinging her eyes. The world around her was a blur. Then, reality struck. People were staring: nurses, guards, bystanders. They saw her uniform, the keys still clutched in her hand, and the Ferrari parked crookedly in front of the hospital. Whispers filled the air. "She stole that car. Isn't that Mr. Harrison's maid? What on earth happened?" Maria lowered her head, shame and fear mixing inside her. She had saved Emily, but what would happen to her now? She sat down on a bench outside, her body trembling. The police sirens grew louder again, and within moments the car she had left behind was surrounded by officers. They stepped out quickly, scanning the area. Maria's breath caught in her throat. She knew they would come for her. To them, she was nothing more than a thief. But in her heart, she told herself she had done the right thing. If she had to face punishment, she would face it. Emily's life was worth everything. Minutes felt like hours as Maria sat waiting, her thoughts heavy. She replayed every moment of the drive, the fear, the speed, the danger, but above all, she remembered Emily's weak little voice thanking her. That gave her peace. Whatever came next, she would not regret what she had done. Behind the closed hospital doors, the doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize Emily. Outside, Maria sat under the harsh white lights, the weight of the night pressing down on her shoulders. She was a poor maid, a woman with nothing, yet tonight she had carried the responsibility of life and death. And though the world might call her a thief, she knew the truth: she had chosen courage over fear, love over hesitation. It was only the beginning of the storm that was about to unfold, but deep in her heart, Maria was certain she had made the right choice. Inside the hospital, the bright lights flickered against the polished floors, and the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hallways. Maria sat on the edge of a wooden bench outside the emergency room, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her heart was still beating as if she were racing the Ferrari, even though the car now sat silently outside under the watchful eyes of police officers. She could still hear its engine in her ears, roaring like it had been carrying her fear and hope together through the streets. But now all was quiet, except for the pounding of her own heart. She had done her part. Emily was with the doctors. Yet Maria knew her troubles were far from over. People passing through the corridor stole glances at her. They saw the plain maid's uniform, her messy hair, her trembling body. Whispers began to grow louder. "That's the girl who drove the Ferrari here. Isn't she just a servant? What is she doing with the billionaire's daughter?" Their eyes judged her, not knowing the truth, or not caring about it. Maria kept her head bowed, clutching the small cross necklace around her neck, praying silently for Emily's safety. Suddenly, the double doors of the hospital swung open, and a rush of footsteps filled the hall. Mr. Harrison stormed in, his face pale with both anger and fear. Behind him trailed several of his guests, still dressed in their party clothes, whispering nervously. He was a tall, commanding man, known in the city for his power and wealth, and when he entered, everyone turned to look. His eyes searched wildly until they landed on Maria. For a moment, they blazed with fury. He marched toward her, his voice sharp and loud. "Where is my daughter? What have you done with her?" Maria stood slowly, her legs weak, but her voice steady. "She's inside, sir. The doctors are taking care of her. She couldn't breathe. There was no time to wait. I had to bring her here." Her words were calm, but her heart trembled, waiting for his reaction. Mr. Harrison's face tightened. He grabbed her arm, his voice shaking with emotion. "You took my car. My Ferrari. Do you realize what you've done?" His words were harsh, but his eyes betrayed his deeper fear. Maria didn't flinch. She looked him in the eye and said quietly, "I did what I had to do. Your daughter's life was more important than anything else." The guests around them gasped. Some shook their heads, whispering that she was foolish, that no maid should speak to her master like that. The police officers stepped closer, uncertain whether to arrest her immediately. The tension in the hallway was thick, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Just then, the doctor pushed open the emergency doors. Everyone turned toward him. He removed his mask and said, "She's stable now. We got her in time. Another few minutes, and it could have been worse. She needs rest, but she will be fine." Relief spread across Mr. Harrison's face. His shoulders, tense and rigid, dropped slightly. He let go of Maria's arm and pressed a hand to his forehead. His daughter was safe, that was what mattered most. Emily, pale but smiling faintly, was wheeled out on a hospital bed. Her eyes searched for Maria immediately. When she saw her, she whispered softly, "Maria." The little girl stretched out her hand weakly. Without hesitation, Maria stepped forward, taking her hand gently. Emily's small fingers gripped hers as if to say thank you without words. Everyone in the hall saw it, the bond between the maid and the child. Mr. Harrison froze. He had been ready to explode in anger, to order Maria's arrest for daring to touch his car, for stepping out of her place. But now, seeing his daughter alive, reaching for the maid, something inside him wavered. His mind battled between pride and gratitude. Around him, the murmurs grew. Some of his business associates whispered, "She saved Emily. Without her, who knows what would have happened." Others scoffed, muttering that she had still broken the rules. The police officer stepped closer to Mr. Harrison. "Sir, this woman was seen driving your vehicle without permission. Do you want us to take her in?" The question hung in the air like a sword, waiting to fall. Maria lowered her head, ready for whatever punishment would come. She whispered a prayer again, not for herself, but for Emily's continued recovery. But before Mr. Harrison could answer, Emily spoke, her voice soft but firm for a child. "Papa, don't be angry. Maria saved me. If she hadn't taken the car, I might not be here now." Her words silenced the entire hall. The child's simple truth cut through the pride, the rules, the wealth. Everyone looked at Mr. Harrison, waiting to see what he would say. He stood still for a long moment, torn between his anger at the broken rules and his gratitude for his daughter's life. His eyes moved from Emily's pale face to Maria's tired but steady expression. Finally, he exhaled deeply, his voice quieter. "You risked everything tonight." He paused, then added, "And you saved my daughter's life." Gasps spread among the crowd. The police officer stepped back, waiting. Mr. Harrison did not give the order to arrest her. Instead, he gestured toward the door. "Leave us. All of you." The guests and staff hesitated, but his tone left no room for argument. Slowly, they moved away, leaving only him, Maria, and Emily in the quiet hallway. He turned to Maria, his face unreadable. "You broke every rule. You had no right to touch my car, let alone drive it. Do you understand what that means?" Maria nodded quietly. "I do, sir. But I also knew that if I didn't, Emily might not survive. I'm ready to accept whatever punishment you give me." Her voice did not shake. She was prepared for the worst, because in her heart she had done the right thing. For the first time, Mr. Harrison saw her differently. She was not just a maid standing in a plain uniform. She was a woman who had risked her future, her freedom, even her life, for his child. He looked at Emily again, who still held Maria's hand tightly, refusing to let go. The sight pierced through his pride, reaching a part of him he had buried under years of wealth and power. In that moment, Mr. Harrison realized something he had never admitted before, that courage and loyalty were not measured by status or money. They were measured by actions. And tonight, this maid had shown more courage than many men he knew. He felt a sting of shame for nearly allowing anger to blind him. The silence between them stretched, but it was no longer hostile. It was heavy with realization. Maria stood quietly, waiting, while Emily held on tightly. Finally, Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. "We will talk more about this later. For now, stay with her." His voice was softer now, almost weary. Maria's eyes widened in surprise, but she bowed her head in respect. "Thank you, sir." She sat beside Emily's bed as the nurses wheeled her to a private room, holding her hand the whole way. Mr. Harrison followed behind, silent but thoughtful, his eyes fixed on the two of them. What had begun as a night of panic and anger was turning into something unexpected. The whispers of staff and guests would not disappear easily, but deep down, the truth was clear: Maria's bravery had saved Emily. And though many had doubted her, her actions spoke louder than any words. The question now was not whether she had done the right thing, but how Mr. Harrison would respond to such courage. The answer would come soon, and it would shock everyone who thought they already knew the ending of the story. The morning sun broke gently through the hospital windows, casting a warm glow across the quiet room where Emily lay resting. Her breathing was steady now, and her color was returning little by little. Maria sat at her side, her eyes heavy from lack of sleep but unwilling to move. She held Emily's small hand, watching her chest rise and fall, each breath a sign of life and hope. For Maria, the exhaustion was nothing compared to the relief she felt knowing the child was safe. The previous night's chaos still echoed in her mind: the sound of the Ferrari roaring through the streets, the flashing police lights, the gasps of wealthy guests at the hospital. She knew the story was already spreading like wildfire. People would talk, twist the truth, and label her a thief. In their eyes, a poor maid had no right to touch the expensive car of a billionaire, no matter the reason. Yet Maria sat calmly, because she knew the truth. She had chosen Emily's life over her own fear. The door opened quietly, and Mr. Harrison stepped inside. He was not wearing the sharp suit from the party anymore. Instead, he looked tired, his eyes marked with sleeplessness and worry. For a moment, he simply stood in the doorway, watching Maria by his daughter's side. Something in his expression had changed. The fierce pride and anger from the night before had softened into thoughtfulness. Maria rose quickly when she saw him, lowering her head respectfully. "Good morning, sir," she said quietly. "She is better now. The doctors say she will recover fully." Mr. Harrison nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on Emily. He walked closer, brushing a hand gently across his daughter's hair. Emily stirred, opening her eyes weakly. When she saw her father, she smiled faintly, then turned her gaze toward Maria. "Papa," she whispered, "Maria saved me." The words hung in the air like a verdict. Mr. Harrison felt his chest tighten. He looked at Maria again, really looking this time not as a maid, not as a servant, but as the woman who had risked everything to bring his daughter to safety. He thought of the guests' shocked faces, of the police asking whether to arrest her, of his own rage when he first arrived. Shame pricked at him for how close he had come to making a terrible mistake. "I know, Emily," he said softly, kissing her forehead. Then he straightened and turned to Maria. His voice carried the weight of authority, but it was gentler now. "You have done something no one else dared to do. You broke the rules, yes, but in doing so, you saved my daughter's life. For that, I owe you more than I can ever repay." Maria shook her head quickly, her hands trembling. "Sir, I don't need anything. I only did what I thought was right. I could not stand by and watch her suffer. Even if it meant losing everything, I had to act." Her words were simple, but they cut deep into the silence of the room. Mr. Harrison studied her for a long moment, then turned to the doctor, who had entered quietly. "Doctor, make sure all of her medical bills are taken care of. Spare no expense." The doctor nodded. Then Mr. Harrison looked back at Maria. "And as for you, you will not return to the mansion as a maid." Maria's heart sank. She lowered her eyes, thinking this was her dismissal. Perhaps this was the punishment after all. She whispered, "I understand, sir." But Mr. Harrison continued, his voice steady. "From this day forward, you will not be treated as a servant. You will be part of this household, trusted and respected. You saved my child when no one else could. I want you to oversee not only the care of my daughter but also the welfare of my home. Consider yourself promoted. You are no longer just the maid, you are family." Maria's eyes widened, disbelief flooding her heart. She looked at him, uncertain if she had heard correctly. The guests who had followed them into the hospital corridor earlier now murmured in shock. Some could not believe what they were hearing. How could a billionaire speak of a maid as family? But Mr. Harrison's face was serious, leaving no room for doubt. Tears welled in Maria's eyes. She bowed deeply. "Thank you, sir. I don't deserve such kindness." "Yes, you do," he replied firmly. "Bravery deserves respect. Loyalty deserves reward. And compassion deserves honor. You have shown all three." Emily squeezed Maria's hand and smiled, whispering again, "I told you, Papa. She's not just a maid. She's special." News of the event spread quickly across the city. People whispered in cafes, workplaces, and neighborhoods about the maid who had stolen the Ferrari, only to reveal herself as a hero. Some mocked at first, saying it was a scandal, but when the truth came out that she had saved the billionaire's daughter, admiration replaced ridicule. Journalists wanted the story, neighbors repeated it with awe, and many ordinary people looked at Maria as a symbol of courage. Back at the mansion days later, things were never the same again. Staff members who once mocked Maria for her poverty now looked at her with respect, some even with guilt for their past words. Guests who visited the house treated her differently, careful not to dismiss her presence. But Maria remained humble, never allowing pride to change her. She still worked hard, still cared for her family at home, still carried herself with quiet dignity. Mr. Harrison kept his promise. He ensured Maria's mother received the best medical care, and he arranged scholarships for her younger brothers. He told Maria, "Your family's struggle ends here. You carried them on your shoulders for so long. Now let me help carry some of that weight." For the first time in many years, Maria felt the burden on her heart lighten. Though she had been poor, ignored, and underestimated, Maria had proven her worth not with money or status, but with courage and love. She had driven through the night not knowing if she would succeed, ready to face punishment if it came. Instead, she had found honor and recognition in the most unexpected way. The Ferrari, once a symbol of wealth and distance, now held a different meaning for the family. Every time Mr. Harrison looked at it, he remembered not the shine of luxury but the desperate drive of a maid determined to save his daughter. To him, it became a reminder that human life was always greater than any possession. Emily never forgot that night either. She often told her friends proudly, "Maria is my hero." And each time she said it, Maria smiled quietly, grateful that she had followed her heart instead of her fear. In the end, Maria's life changed, not because she sought glory or reward, but because she chose courage over silence. Her story became a lesson whispered in many homes, that sometimes, the poorest hands carry the richest hearts, and the most ordinary people are capable of extraordinary deeds.